high-level meetings, intense negotiations, a high-stakes chess game of diplomacy and deal-making in full swing. I'm not talking about India's deal with the US. This time, I'm talking about India's deals with Russia and China. That's right, India has an opportunity in Trump's tariff crisis, and it's taking that opportunity with both hands. So what's on the menu? What does India want from Russia? What can it get from China? And why is it in mission mode as it deals with both? This is Shubhangi Sharma and you're watching Fine Point. Let's dive in. Prime Minister Modi's high-level engagements with Russian and Chinese presidents Putin in New Delhi, Xi Jinping in Beijing, and possibly a symbolic RIC meet on the sidelines of the SCO summit make room for an array of opportunities in a moment of crisis. Even as India navigates Trump's tariff war, it has legitimate areas to address with respect to Moscow and Beijing. India has a large trade deficit with Russia, driven by oil sales swelling abruptly over the course of the Ukraine war, which New Delhi wants addressed. Meanwhile, the reset with China has entered fertile ground in the current geopolitical circumstances, which raises the chance of good faith outcomes and mutual understandings. But first, let's look at those geopolitical circumstances. The United States under President Donald Trump has triggered a geopolitical shockwave far beyond the realm of trade and tariffs. One of the biggest hit has surprisingly turned out to be India. While Trump's classic style of deal-making could not breach India's red lines, a number of geopolitical threats emerged on the table, essentially upending India's entire calculus around its relationship with the US and its place in the Indo-Pacific. Trump made a series of provocative missteps, weaponizing Pakistan against India, seeking credit where it was not due on Operation Sindoor, and trying to mediate on Kashmir. This couldn't fly with India, which made its displeasure known, leading to a conflict of minds right at the very top. The stage was set for a grand fallout, but the trigger came from the trade deal. Trump had expected big numbers, large, unrealistic commitments in terms of investments, large defense and energy purchases, credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire, perhaps a Nobel Prize nomination, and maybe even more. This was when Trump introduced the Russia card seemingly out of nowhere. Failing to get Russia to agree on a ceasefire in Ukraine for 6 months, Trump changed tack and decided to go after Russia's oil customers. Trump steered clear of China, the #1 buyer of Russian oil, and went for the second best thing, India, which he may have found easier to bully. He threw Russian oil into the mix of trade negotiations to build the ultimate leverage dramatically close to his tariff deadline. Now, India finds itself with 50% tariffs from the US, the highest of any country, a stark uncertainty about any future trade deal, and a relationship so sour it could make a lemon blush. Western experts have become increasingly wary of India's deepening alignment with BRICS partners, especially with Russia and China, as a result of Trump's missteps. Now, India will welcome Putin for an annual bilateral summit later this month, after which Prime Minister Modi will head to China for the SCO summit, where he will be meeting Xi Jinping. Even the Russia-India-China trilateral may be in season, something both Russia and China crave. Moreover, China and India have been pursuing a reset, with India showing more hesitation than China on the economic front. But it's time to turn Trump's tariff crisis into an opportunity with Russia and China. Now, starting with Russia, with which India has developed a large trade deficit in the last 3 years of the war in Ukraine. India's purchase of discounted Russian oil drove this deficit. A lot of these payments were done through the rupee-ruble payment system, which means Russia holds billions of rupees right now, which India wants it to pump back into the Indian economy as investments and for imports from India. When External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar visited Russia in November in 2024, he raised with Putin this ballooning trade deficit, calling for its urgent redressal. Just look at how this trade has grown one-sidedly. In 2021, India-Russia trade was just about $1 billion. But it rose sharply after the Ukraine war. Oil prices skyrocketed and India started buying discounted Russian oil, taking trade to almost $71 billion, with Indian imports at $65.7 billion annually and exports to Russia at $4.9 billion. In just a few years, trade surged by 6,000%, and the trade deficit, it has come as high as $61 billion. To build a sustainable trading relationship, something has to be done about this. Now, India has several asks from Russia to settle this imbalance, and they will be at the top of the agenda as the leaders meet later this month. Firstly, Russia must reduce non-tariff barriers and increase imports of pharmaceutical, machinery, chemicals, and agricultural products from India. It can invest in Indian infrastructure, manufacturing, and services, and there are talks on a bilateral investment treaty to push this as well. It must also expedite the FTA talks with the Eurasian Economic Union, whose members are Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, apart from Russia. Russia now holds billions of rupees in Indian banks, especially in special rupee Vostro accounts. India pushed for Russia to invest these rupees back into the Indian economy, and several mechanisms have been put in place as well. RBI has allowed Russian entities to invest rupee balances in sovereign and infrastructure-linked securities. Regulations now permit Russian investments in Indian stocks and bonds. India and Russia are exploring mechanisms akin to the India-UAE model, which means invoicing and payments in the rupee-ruble-based central bank arrangements, and discussions are underway on implementing trilateral settlement mechanisms involving the UAE. Moreover, Russia's oil discounts have narrowed from their peak of above $12 per barrel to just $2 to $3 per barrel. As demand shrinks from Indian refiners, given the narrowing discounts and later the tariff threat from America, Russia has sought to deepen the discounts to $5 a barrel. So all in all, India's trade gap with Russia is hitting the roof, fueled by oil and the rupee-ruble tango. Now Russia is parking its rupees in Indian assets, but closing the gap means more investments and more Indian goods going out and Russian cash coming in. Oil discounts that once gushed have trickled, but to secure its place in the Indian oil import basket, Russia might want to sweeten the deal again. Now let's move to China, where another opportunity awaits. Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to India on August 18th to meet NSA Ajit Doval will set the stage for Modi's first trip to China in 7 years, aimed at instilling positivity in the relationship. While the reset in India-China relations started in 2024, it has gained momentum under current geopolitical conditions, opening the door for constructive outcomes. Beijing could step up transfers of rare earths, strategic machinery, and specialty fertilizer, all of which it has weaponized in trade negotiations. And meanwhile, New Delhi may consider easing restrictions on Chinese investments in select sectors, helping address its nearly $100 billion trade deficit with China. Post-Galwan, India had largely shut the door on Chinese investments for national security reasons, allowing approvals only on a case-by-case basis. However, with global investments drying up amid Trump's tariff war, India has pragmatic reasons to cautiously reopen. This is a key ask from the Chinese side as well, as it seeks to be a development partner. Both sides have used their leverage to force favorable outcomes, and now they are close to finding a settlement. Just look at the flurry of movement of late. China resuming the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, India resuming tourist visas to Chinese nationals after 5 years, and both nations are going to start direct flights as well. Another major confidence-building measure is the resumption of border trade. China has also eased curbs on urea shipments. A massive batch of diesel oil has been shipped to China from India's Naira refiner, which faces EU sanctions, and expectations are also high for further relaxation on specialty fertilizer and rare earth exports. This rapprochement could become a win-win if managed strategically, and there could be major announcements possible during a likely Modi-Xi Jinping meeting. Such progress may even boost military disengagement ultimately in the Himalayas. But don't get me wrong, does this mean that China can be trusted now? Absolutely not. Beijing remains a military and strategic adversary with an unresolved boundary dispute and an enduring alliance with Pakistan. Yet, peace thrives on nuance. Just as a bloody border clash once destabilized economic engagement, a deliberate effort to stabilize economic ties could over time ease tensions on the strategic and military front. Through more than 4 years of a military standoff, China has received India's message of resilience in the face of an adversary. It has sought to charm India in recent years and has a stake in peace just as much as India does, at least for now, and it has also behaved at the border of late. So this dialogue will lay out a roadmap for peaceful bilateral ties in the years ahead. The key is to preserve the positive while keeping a watchful eye on the negative, And if a few years of peace and growth are achieved through this reset, that would be the best possible outcome. Simply put, India was already on its way to reset ties with China and to address the trade imbalance with Russia. With Trump's antics, both these missions become even more urgent. There are no real friends in geopolitics, only interests. And now as Trump's trade bombs drop and global norms unravel, New Delhi's playbook is simple: adapt, hustle, and never bet on forever friends.